It's the 15th of January 2026, and it already looks like the end of the season is upon us. Out of all the domestic cups, 14th in the league with 7 wins, 6 draws and 8 losses. Barring another miracle in Europe, it looks like another year in transition as we spend more time looking at the bottom of the table than the top. I'm going to go through the arguments on both sides of the debate around the manager, and we'll try to flesh them out with evidence and come to a summary and conclusion about what I think the next best steps are and how to secure the long-term future of the club. Let me know in the comments if there are any angles I've missed on what other aspects should be considered. Now, Frank has some support in our fan base, and many of the factors are around certain situations that are beyond his control. There have been improvements in defensive structure and solidity from our previous seasons under Ange. He's only had half a season and one transfer window. He's had key attacking absences of Maddison, Kulusevski and Solanke. Injuries continue to be a nightmare, with new additions to the sick room in Bergvall, Richarlison, Bentancur joining Kudus, with only 2 returnees, Udogi and Solanke. Spurs fans are sick of constant renewal by changing the manager, and we see Arsenal starting to reap the benefits of sticking with Arteta. Our players have been prone to individual mistakes, and some games have been lost due to mistakes and actions by players that no sane coach would ask their players to do. It could be argued that you could put Guardiola, Klopp or whoever you think the best manager of the world is here, and they would still fail. Indeed, we've had Mourinho and Conte lose their serial winning streaks here, and some of the factors are above his pay grade, which continue to be broken. Managers need time to build dynasties. Alex Ferguson is arguably the greatest manager of Premier League history, but he was on the verge of being sacked until a dramatic FA Cup replay against Crystal Palace. His first 4 seasons included 2 11th place finishes and a 13th place finish. The modern era is far less forgiving, and enough seasons outside of the European places is enough for you to get the boot. Klopp survives 2 seasons in 6th and 8th before Liverpool become mainstays in the Champions League spots and challenging for the title. Arteta survives 2 8th place finishes before consolidating his squad and challenging for the title 4 seasons in a row. Spurs have had a bias towards firing the manager earlier rather than later. Here are some managers who were fired who have had better points returns than Frank. Spurs is 6th best in the league at denying opponents high probability scoring chances. It's fair to say that Frank is unlucky to be missing the services of some of our most influential attacking players. Between them, they accounted for 36% of the team's goals and assists last season, as well as the lion's share of the progressive passing down the middle. Sacking managers causes a period of flux for the club, as it takes time for players and staff to adapt to the new manager's methods, philosophy, system, and style of play. Most managers have to take time to assess the existing squad to ascertain their fit for the system, especially since Spurs aren't going to whip out the checkbook and sign every player that they want. The World Cup also means that many potential candidates like Nagelsmann, Pochettino, Scaloni, Tuchel, Lopetegui, and Bielsa are currently engaged. There have been numerous managers in our past like Mourinho and Conte who have complained about the attitude of the players and the inherent culture at the club that lets them get away with subpar performances and effort. There have been games which were lost on individual mistakes, conceding goals. On the other hand, so many players, even the ones we banter like Emerson Royal, Ndombele and Aurier, win titles after leaving Spurs. Is there something we do or do not do at N17 that predisposes players for failure? The innovative dual director system of Langer and Paratici lasted barely longer than Liz Truss's lettuce. Vacillating between coaches of incompatible styles of play and player requirements causes a big part of the lengthy acclimation period for new managers. The club continues to sign youth prospects not for their attributes and fit for the system, but for their resale value. Squad planning is a mess, resulting in Tel being left out of the Europa League squad, and players like Solomon, Hill, Valise and Rodon spending more time on loan than contributing to the first team. If the club structures are broken, the best managers in the world can't fix them. So to square the circle, I think it's true that half a season isn't enough time for any manager to be truly judged, and we have seen some of the improvements in defense which he was brought in to solve. His progress has been compounded by injury problems which we have seen consistently over the past 3 seasons. This invalidate some of the arguments that certain coaches cause more injuries. This seems to be a constant at Spurs in our recent history, and it's more likely to be related to schedule congestion, as we've seen such issues in Newcastle, City and Arsenal as well. But our poor squad planning exacerbates the problem, as we're often forced to rely on thin cover, which overloads our squad players and eventually causes injuries to them as well. I don't buy the argument about not wanting to restart another cycle. I understand why fans feel that way, because with Spurs, we have tended to sack managers faster than most clubs, even managers that were still popular with the fanbase at the time, like Pochettino, Redknapp and Yaw. I will say that looking back at those reigns with the rose-tinted glasses of nostalgia, thinking what if possibly glosses over the poor results at the time of the sacking, and fans are quick to forget their feelings of "it can't go on like this" after the fact. Similarly with arguments about players, I think the squad certainly can be better, but our entire first team and half our bench are senior internationals. If your club's training grounds are busy during an international break, yes, you probably have a shit squad. But if you're constantly watching international games, biting your fingers hoping that your players come back in one piece, your squad is fine, and it's the coach's job to get more out of them. The last tick here is extra big because I think this problem is actually the root of all our managerial problems. The club hierarchy did a great job of progressing us from mid-table to European contenders, and that playbook consisted of managing finances well, selling our best players at peak value, as painful as it was at the time, and reinvesting the funds into the next generation of players to take us to the next level. Going from the European spots to competing for the league entails a different playbook, and that's what the club has failed to adapt to. Selling our best players at peak value must be to other leagues. We failed to do that and strengthen City with Walker, Liverpool with Keane, United with Berbatov and Carrick. The fact that we sold Bale and Modric to Madrid, Son to LAFC and Kane to Bayern represents an improvement in this regard. The renewal and squad planning is where we need most improvement. Right now, we over-index on signing young players based on potential and resale value. It is important to do because it's money that the club makes from this that can be reinvested into better signings, but the mismanagement of homegrown and club-trained slots is horrific. Brendan Austin is our only club-trained player. UEFA requires 4 out of 8 locally trained players to be club-trained, meaning to be at the club for 3 years between 15 to 21 years of age. Failing to meet this criteria means we have to leave 3 squad spots empty. Arsenal exploited a loophole by naming Saliba in their under-21 squad when he was on loan, allowing his loan spell to be counted towards his homegrown requirement. We attempted to do this for Sarr, but his non-EU work permit prevented us from exploiting that. Registering any less than the maximum number of players and overplaying our current options results in the injuries we have and the drop-off in quality whenever we look to the bench. Most of all, our problem is we sign squad players rather than first-team level players. If you claim you want to compete on all fronts, you should be signing to bench our existing first-team players, especially if you want to improve on their previous showing. How often have we signed a prospect rather than a player that steps in and improves us right now? The results are a big part of the reason patience is wearing thin with Thomas Frank. Spurs fans have an expectation of attacking football from the push and run era, and the whole reason I started supporting Spurs to begin with was our style of play. Related to this, the way Spurs attacks this season can be summarized as set-piece FC with a side of right-wing crosses from Porro and Kudus, which is beginning to wear thin, especially when teams have figured out how to counter it, and with Kudus out for the foreseeable future, we don't really have a different way of attacking. Press conferences are a very regular occurrence with modern day managers, and fans really don't want to hear their manager saying, "I guarantee we will lose games," how good their opposition are, how they aren't real fans for booing, and being told that the team played very well when they're already frustrated with the result and the spectacle. Some fans are very sore about the way Ange was let go at the end of the previous season and are reveling in any weakness in Frank's reign with a very strong sense of schadenfreude.
I told them and they laughed.
We have seen a wave of rumours around the future of our players, including Van de Ven, Romero, Richarlison, Dragusin, Tel, and others in the past 2 weeks. And there are more indications that all is not well in the dressing room. At this point, Frank has a win percentage of 33% with 1.29 points per game. which if you extrapolate over the full season puts us at 49 points. In the context of recent managers, that puts him behind Sherwood with 1.91, Poch with 1.9, Conte with 1.88, AVB with 1.83, Redknapp with 1.74, and Mourinho with 1.68, Yall with 1.5, and Ange with 1.37. He's even behind Christian Gross at 1.31, and only Santini at 1.18 and Ramos at 1.17 are behind. Generally speaking, if you want to compete for the title, you need to average 2.37 points per game for 90 points. This total would win you the league 5 times out of the last 11 years, but you'll notice if you eliminate the seasons before 2017-18, the average goes up to 2.46 and 93.1 points. Our best seasons under Poch were 2.26 points per game when we finished second to Chelsea and 1.84 when we finished third to Leicester. With Brentford taking only Premier League games, Frank averaged 1.315 points per game, marginally better than his current record at Spurs. One of the things Frank's had to fix was the defensive fragility Spurs had under Ange. We'll take a look at what improvements he's made and whether we've made trade-offs in attack in order to achieve this. Then we'll contextualize this in the bigger picture of whether we're better off having improved our defense and whether we're better off on the whole. I'll also note that we saw with Mourinho and Conte that when the results don't come, the style of play can come under scrutiny very fast because fans don't even have entertainment value to fall back on. One of the criticisms Ange had was how easily teams scored against Spurs. Indeed, the quality of chances afforded to opponents had Spurs languishing 4th worst in terms of expected goals allowed in 2024-25. This means that the chances to score Spurs offered up to opponents were the 4th best in the league. Even in the 2023-2024 season where we finished 5th, our XG allowed was 7th. Frank has improved the defense from 15th worst or 6th best in terms of reducing the quality of the chances presented to opponents. What trade-offs have we made to achieve this? Flipping the statistic in the opposite direction, Spurs are 17th in creating attacking chances, 16th in touches in the penalty box, 3rd in the league for crosses, we see this week in week out with Porro and Kudus, and rock bottom for through balls, 11 played all season in 21 games. There are 9 individual players who have played more through passes than our entire team. Thomas Frank has stated in many interviews and videos that he doesn't believe long shots are a high percentage chance and prefers to pack the box to prevent close quarter opportunities. One of the side effects of that as a team is that we take less long shots and put less pressure on our opponents taking them. We have conceded 10 long shots this season, 1 against Brighton and Bournemouth, and 2 each against Forest, Fulham, Villa and PSG. I'd say we conceded 2 against PSG because one of the long shots from Vitinha was just inside the box by fine margins. I have not counted the goal by Fabian Ruiz from a similar distance because it was from losing the ball in build-up and can't be attributed to us being lax about pressuring long shots. I'm counting these long shots on us failing to press the shooter, not just based on distance alone. This blind spot is similar to Ange's refusal to work on set pieces, and I'll say this is one of the strongest counter-arguments to the assertion that these players are uncoachable. Because we went from being bad at defending and attacking with set pieces under Ange to becoming second in scoring from set pieces in the league. We also went from being one of the most defensively fragile teams to becoming a much more solid team at the back over the course of one transfer window, at the cost of being much less varied in our attacking build-up play. The players and team take on the coach's priorities and worldview of the game. That unfortunately also includes conceding more from long shots because we put less pressure on them since the coach does not think they're a viable goal threat. One of the hallmarks of Frank ball is how little ball progression happens down in central midfield. We frequently lob vertical balls to the flanks and expect Kudus, Porro, Audebert, Tel, Muani and Richarlison to work miracles to win second balls and make something happen from there. His insistence on defensively solid central midfielders like Palhinha and Bentancur who spend more time passing sideways and backwards everywhere we go means that Xavi doesn't receive the ball enough and has to drop back deep to receive it. Then progress play from a much deeper space on the pitch rather than pulling strings in the opponent's third. We are rock bottom in the league for through balls, and you'll see from the graphic, the teams who top the league for through balls are in the top 4 of the league, 7th and 8th. Correlation is not causation, but this stuff seems to work. Broadly speaking, what do successful teams do well? If you look at Liverpool last year, they were first in XG and non-penalty XG, meaning they created the best goal-scoring chances across the league. They were also third in passes into the penalty box, not including corners, second in progressive passes, and nowhere near the top in crosses. More on that later. How about City the year before? They were second in XG and non-penalty XG, third in passes into the penalty box, fourth in progressive passes, and also nowhere near the top in crosses. What about the current Spurs team? We are bottom 4 in XG and non-penalty XG, bottom 5 in passes into the penalty area, 13th in progressive passes. We are, however, 6th in crosses, sharing illustrious company with teams in 15th, 17th, and 20th, and Newcastle and United, who are randomly there in 6th and 7th. We're doing badly in statistics which are highly correlated with success in the league, and well in a statistic which does not. Extrapolating this from the 2017-18 season, we see that champions are typically in the top 2 of XG and non-penalty XG, touches in the penalty box and progressive passes, or at least in the top 4 of those stats, and crosses are not really relevant. So if we want to compete on all fronts, how does becoming set-piece FC, cross-spamming FC help? Moving on to calling out fans and being negative about Spurs in interviews. Like it or not, bigger clubs have fans with egos. Spurs get bantered by other clubs all the time, arguably more so than most. Even Chelsea and Arsenal fans spent a final together singing anti-Spurs songs. The fans want a manager to talk up their club, not constantly saying their shit, doubting whether they're a Champions League team, and players won't like that either. Spurs already get bantered at random places like the darts with "What do we think of Tottenham? Shit!" And they don't need a manager to give rivals more material.
Your manager did this, by the way. This is nothing. This isn't Arsenal fans doing this. Your manager did this.
Talk?
You don't have any credit in the bank to lecture fans about who a true fan is, or call for support when they've decided you've not organically earned it yet. It is a reality that fans have their favourite managers and will compare the new manager to them. After Mourinho was fired, his fans stuck around to shit on everything subsequent managers did. Fans make these comparisons for their own reasons, but when you as a manager choose to do so, you are kicking over a hornet's nest. If you do it with Jacques Santini or like George Graham, that's probably fine. But choosing to do it with Spurs' first title-winning manager in 17 years is an interesting choice. However badly the league went, there are fans who wanted to see Spurs win a title before they die, or have family members that died just before that. It's an extremely personal connection fans will have to that moment, and by calling it out in this way, you are setting yourself against what for some fans have been the best moment of their time supporting Spurs. There are many ways to communicate the challenges you face without denigrating previous regimes and pitting yourself against the cult of personality of a former manager who will be viewed through the lens of rose-tinted nostalgia, having won a title. Players are easily the most high-impact members of staff that affect our on-field results. Losing first-team players without adequate replacements for them can adversely affect results for many seasons. Losing Carrick, Dembele, Berbatov, Keane, Eriksen, and now Kane and Son are huge events that can have far-reaching consequences. It's far more economical to retain the player you have, who already works in your system, than to try to find a replacement and train them, especially when you have to account for the possibility that they're not replaceable, and even if they are, you have to account for the time cost of getting them back up to speed. Losing important players can also trigger a cascade where other players leave what they perceive to be a sinking ship. The loss of Son and Kane is very significant here. For years, Spurs outperformed our XG because we uniquely had two of the greatest finishers in history at the same time in the same front line. This means that even when systems or coaches or teammates did not create good chances, Son and Kane were still able to score with mediocre opportunities. Now that Son and Kane are gone, if you could choose 3 players from the club to keep and build the team around, who would they be? I think it's safe to say that Romero, Van de Ven and Bergwijn would rank fairly high. There are rumours that Romero and Van de Ven are already seeking moves. Bergwijn's still young, but he turned down Barcelona to join Spurs, so I'm not sure he did that to be the club's second best at long throws behind Danso. The whole point of retaining a manager is to keep your club stable, but if your best players are intent on leaving the club, and a change of manager will convince them to stay, it actually becomes less destabilizing to change the manager rather than lose all your best players. If we look at the transfer window, the rumours are linking us to box-to-box midfielders or defensive midfielders, and not really the profile of progressive passing schemas that we need. This means that we are locking into Frank ball and a continued focus on wide ball progression and crosses as chance creation, despite evidence that teams which compete on all fronts don't get successful by playing this way. Over the course of editing this video, the signing of Gallagher was confirmed, and while he is a good player and an improvement over Bentancur and Sarr, that doesn't change the problem that we do not sign profiles that will solve our biggest problem in attack, central ball progression. I think it's necessary to add some context on Palhinha and Gallagher here. The feedback is not that Gallagher will play badly. He'll probably do well and score goals, and people who like this signing will turn around and say, "See, we were right." Just like how Palhinha fans say, he scored so many goals including bicycle kicks, so who says he's not creative? That's not the point being made. The issue is that their attributes don't help the main problem the team has, lack of central, creative midfield ball progression. It doesn't make up for the fact that Xavi has to receive the ball much deeper than if we had good passes that can get the ball to him through the lines. That means Xavi has to do a lot more work to provide service for our strikers, which already have so few chances per game as evidenced by multiple games under 1 expected goal and many halves with 0 shots on target. Think of all the work that Maddison does, receiving the ball on the turn, beating his man, playing a 1-2, dictating tempo, finding a player, making a run behind the lines. As long as we continue to sign players that can't do this, we're not solving the main problem we have in attacking phases of play. Saying we don't need more of Palhinha and Gallagher's profile doesn't mean we think they're bad players. It just means we need players that offer a different skill set because that's what the team is serially lacking. And we'd rather that be addressed first rather than signing a better version of a profile we are already stacked 4 players deep with. For the Frank out arguments, my opinion is that results are going to be hard to quantify in view of the ongoing injury crisis and terrible squad building in the summer transfer window. We failed to get adequate cover for left back, have a bad mix of profiles for central midfield, have an oversupply for left wing striker hybrids with no clear first choice and deputy, resulting in competition for places for minutes with neither option being particularly compelling, a direct clash between Johnson and Kudus for the right wing position, resulting in Johnson leaving just as Kudus got injured, and no clear deputy to replace him. Results are bad, but the club's hierarchy can take some of the blame for this. The style of play of football has been an issue for the fans as a spectacle, and that does matter because results are never guaranteed, but fans have more patience if they at least are watching something entertaining or there's something worth waiting for. The attacking play being too predictable has made it far too easy for teams to work us out and suffocate our choke points, which is to man-mark Kudus, target Poro's flank, and pressure our central midfielders into sideways and backwards passes, while compacting the centre and being prepared for cross-spamming. Frank's negativity towards the club's prospects while having a go at the fans winds fans up who are already frustrated with the spectacle and is demotivating for players. Even if it is true, it doesn't need to be said, and there are lots of ways to make the points he makes without having the undesirable side effects of annoying fans, throwing players under the bus, and polarizing support against him. There are fans waiting to dance on Frank's grave for denying them Season 3 with Ange, but honestly that's more Levy and the club hierarchy's fault. I can't really support that as a reason to sack Frank. The risk of losing players for me is the most compelling reason to change the manager, if it's true. The whole argument around keeping a manager for the long term is that stability is needed for the club to progress, by pruning players that are surplus to requirements, and improving them with new acquisitions while enhancing squad cohesion, building chemistry and partnerships within the existing squad. If the players are so unhappy that they're planning to leave, and its leadership figures and the best players in the squad, you have to make a call about whether this manager is so damn good you're willing to lose your brightest and best assets and completely rebuild your squad. Is Frank a Pep or Klopp incarnate? Given our learned experience is that Spurs are more likely to sell Romero and Van der Ven for 90 million than buy cut price replacements at 30 million, we should hold on to the best players we have, especially since they're young and have at least 8 years of their prime under the right management. The real problem is the structure that hired Frank, and he is suffering as a symptom of a larger problem. There are some characteristics we know work better as a Spurs manager. The playstyle needs to be attacking and to be a good in-possession team that seeks to be the protagonist in the game, rather than looking to punch above our weight. It doesn't mean that we don't do game management or understand when to shut up shop for a win, but those are game state level decisions that should be subsidiary to an overarching philosophy. The way the club is portrayed to the media and the fans and the players is important. The coach should be proud to be a manager of the club. Mourinho and Conte often spoke as if they were doing us a favor by gracing us with their presence, and we are a charity case. The personality a manager has determines whether players will fight for him or not, and how much they will suffer for the cause. Youth will be a big part for Spurs because of the connection with the fans and grassroots, and this gap will become wider because of the money in the game and the results-oriented nature of the business, making it tempting for coaches to spend more for guaranteed results rather than trusting our youth team players. We must improve the way our players develop under the manager. The reason Poch is under the cross, which a lot of people might disagree with, is that he actually stunted development for a lot of youth team players by not allowing them to go out on loan, but also not giving them enough minutes for their development, leading to the departures of Kyle Walker-Peters, Josh Onoma, Marcus Edwards, and Noni Madueke. It's tempting to say of these, only Madueke is a player we might consider to be good enough, and the counter-argument is that we may have stunted their development so much that their careers failed to develop because of Spurs' negligence. Similarly, Ange is listed here as well because he trusted youth team players only after injuries decimated the rest of the team, and didn't use them anymore once the senior players returned. Arguably, more rotation with the players he ended up using might have actually prevented those injuries. Developing senior players is going to continue to be a big part of Spurs' success. All of our modern success has come from buying players who hit their prime with us, like Modric, Bale, Berbatov, Carrick, Keane, Defoe, Eriksen, Dele, Son and Kane, and so many more. In each of these cases, the manager made them better by trusting them and pushing them out of their comfort zone, making them the players they are today. Related to personality, the locker room environment plays a big part in getting the most from players. Mourinho tried to get the players to be bastards, but that didn't work out too well.
We killed that minute one, we press, we're aggressive, fucking chances, goals, and we fucking kill them, man. We fucking qualified today, that's that. Yeah.
Well-run clubs like Brighton and Brentford handled the loss of their manager and players very well. Brentford replaced Frank with his set-piece coach, and they're above us in the table. Brighton replaced Bissouma with Caicedo, then replaced him with Balaba. They've lost Graham Potter, got De Zerbi, and now Herzeleger. Luis Campos, as a director of football, has built dynasties at Monaco, Lille, and PSG. And the important thing to do is to use that knowledge to build a long-lasting structure and not over-rely on the cult of personality. His knowledge can leave the building once he leaves. Monaco collapsed after this because they changed their strategy, while Lille kept a lot of the scouting networks and knowledge that he built. He's now successfully moved PSG from their ill-fated Galactico era to one where they won the Champions League by being the best team in the world last season. My overall take is that Spurs needs to build a director of football structure. Any managerial changes that are decided without that are doomed to repeat many of the mistakes that we have witnessed over the past decades. At this point, I don't even want to sign the best coaches in the world because it would be a waste. I'd rather the club be in a position to actually make use of that manager well before actually trying to sign them. Because we are then already a well-run club and we can actually leverage on that position rather than waste the first impression and have the best manager in the world at the club and then we don't use them well and they never come back again. However, in the short term, if our best players are planning to leave and changing the manager can avert that situation, then we should make that move. Because many of the best options available for managers are at the World Cup. We do need an interim that will get players to play the football they want to play again. At that point, Harry Redknapp has said in the past that he'd do it for free, and while I don't think his tactics necessarily hold up in the modern era, this appointment is about vibes and making it to the summer window and having our players enjoy playing football again. So if we do have to move on from Frank, just give it Harry and figure it out in the summer.